Thank you for visiting the YouTube channel, Manhood, Race, and Culture, where we try to bring intelligent discussion about manhood issues, masculinity, race, and culture in the United States of America. Please like, subscribe, share, and press the notification button if you like the content that we are offering here. And as we're trying to grow the channel and increase this discussion, and feel free to leave us any commentary or send forth any videos that you would like for me to do a response to or what have you. They would be greatly appreciated. You can put them in the message part here, or you can actually send it to me at manhoodraceculture at gmail.com. Love to hear from you. So tonight, and once again, thank you for visiting us. So tonight I thought that we would do a response video again, and we're going to be responding to a brother who, if KRS-One of Boogie Down Productions fame were around to see this brother, he would refer to him as being Captain Human. He's one of these brothers who believes that there's only one race, and that is the human race, and that's all that should matter. Um, it's a great fanciful idea, but in many ways, it is not workable here in a nation that has been built upon what we all who have any understanding of societies understand is a socially constructed racial classification. And so, what we'll do is we will look at his video and we will deconstruct it piece by piece. So, here's the video. We'll just let it play and then we'll go back and take it apart.
Dear white people, you're not racist just because someone says you are. There's a theory going out there that there's this race of people that are causing all the problems in the US, and that is just not true. It's a blatant lie, and it's created to put races against each other. Well, I'm going to debunk something. There are not multiple races of humans. There's one race, the human race. I'm part of that race, you're part of that race, we're all part of that race, and we're a big family. And there are some black people like myself, there are lots of us that don't believe white people are the problem. There is individual responsibility. I want to be judged by the content of my character and not the color of my skin. So I'm going to do the same thing for you. I'm going to judge you by the content of your character and not by the color of your skin. If you agree with this, you're part of the human race. And welcome to the family.
Okay. Once again, I wanted to let it play through one time, and there's principally nothing wrong on the surface of what he is trying to articulate, but he's speaking about it without any historical context of what actually has occurred within this nation. It would be the equivalent of someone breaking into a bank and stealing all the funds, the majority of the funds and resources and what have you, and they parlayed that into a kingdom, and then they turn and they say, "Listen, we're all the same," and there is no redistribution of any of those resources that were taken. And additionally, and this is one of the things I really want to talk about in this video, is this concept of race. Once again, it is a social construct, but it is a social construct that we never really examine in this nation. And just by virtue that we refer to the largest groups, what have historically been the largest groups, as black and white, is a hint that we've created a very nicely packaged story that doesn't tell us anything. And it's in many ways rife with political opportunism that favors one group over another group. So let's go ahead and take this apart, and I'll stop it when I feel I need to.
Dear white people, you're not racist just because.
Okay, I want to stop this right there because I think that his first three words are very, very, very important and illustrative of the thing that I'm talking about, that he's really discussing this as if it's a vacuum. as if nothing has happened before. And if he were before me right now, I would ask him a few questions. And the first question that I would ask him would be, where are the Irish from? And of course, the answer would be Ireland. Where are Ghanaians from? The answer would be Ghana. Where are Nigerians from? Nigeria. You get what I'm saying. Where are the Japanese from? They're from Japan. My question then would be, where are white people from? Where is white land? And of course, there is no place called white land. I'm sure that many of you would say, well, the Caucasus Mountains, where the word Caucasian comes from. But I asked you specifically, where is white land? So this identity of whiteness is not associated with any land base. So in many ways, it's something that has been, for whatever reason, socially constructed. But I think it's important that he understands white people, and yet he's going to spend a big part of his monologue trying to debunk the idea that race exists. So let me hit the play button and let him go again.
Dear white people, you're not racist just because someone says you are. There's a theory going out there that there's this race of people that are causing all the problems in the U.S., and that is just not true.
You are not racist just because someone says you are. That's true. And one of the problems that we have with with this concept of race in America is quite simply that if, quote unquote, and I'll use his terminology, even though I disagree with it, of whiteness, we need for the good white folk to separate themselves from the bad white folk, because there are some racists in our midst. And his sort of overarching broad stroke commentary that just because someone says you're racist doesn't make you right. Yeah, that's true. But don't deny the presence of racial bigotry, of racism, of all of systemic structural racism. You're doing a disservice to the nation by failing to really acknowledge that this racial issue, W.E.B. Du Bois and the Souls of Black Folk, early 20th century, I want to say 1903, Du Bois says the problem of the 20th century will be the problem of the color line. Out of all of the things that Du Bois wrote, I can tell you for sure that that's one of them that I take issue with, because I believe he should have extended it into the new millennium, because it's still here. And people who try to deny it and are approaching it with well, if we don't talk about it, it'll disappear. We'll try that with cancer, because this is a social cancer that is eroding this nation. It's eroded this nation so much that you have individuals in this nation who deny their actual identity. Now, what am I saying when I say they deny their actual identity? There is no white land. These people, by and large, are what we would term new immigrants. They're the Irish, the Polish, the Russians, the Germans. And the old immigrants being, of course, what? The British. They have dropped their ethnic identity in favor of a socially constructed race classification that gives them an advantage. Let's let the brother continue.
Blatant lie, and it's created to put races against each other.
So he says that racism is a blatant lie that is created to pit races against each other. Dangerous, reckless, cluttered thinking, because it begs the question of who is it that is trying to pit the races against each other? Or is the truth of the matter that you have a quote unquote, once again, I'll use this term, a white population that has been taught, has never really lived in a nation, that they've been taught that any other group has ever made a single contribution. So they have an unwarranted ownership of this nation. And any challenge to that is going to be termed as being irrational, being, being reverse discrimination, whatever term that you want to use. And the truth of the matter is that when you're looking at Black folk who are standing up and they're screaming and hollering, they're reacting to the multiple forms of oppression that not only Black folk, but also poor, quote unquote, white folk experience as well. It's his thinking is troubling to me.
Well, I'm going to debunk something. There are not multiple races of humans.
He's absolutely correct. There are not multiple forms of humans. Scientists have told us this. Now, unless you, one of my brothers that's a racial essentialist, and they know who they are, who believe that the white man is a grafted devil or whatever you want to term him as. The famed comedian Paul Mooney put it this way. He said quite simply, "White people know we do not think that you're the devil, but you'll do until the real one arrives." Okay. And that has been the experience of so many Black folk. But when you're saying that there aren't multiple races, I agree. But I also recognize, as someone who has studied race in America, that I understand that they're in a representative democracy, there's strength in numbers. The British could not have ruled this nation solely. Neither could the Russians, neither could the Irish, any of the new immigrants. So what we see is a coming together, particularly after World War I. There's a brilliant book if you want to read more about the creation of the idea of whiteness, because the Irish, the Polish, the Russians, they were not white before World War I. And much of the vitriol that was hurled at them is found being hurled at brown people now. They can't speak the language. They eat strange foods. They have strange culture and ways. They're drunkards. They'll never be civilized. That's what was said about the Irish. Wonderful book that was written, How the Irish Became White. Clearly a sign, even in the title, that the Irish were not always white. But my question for you would be quite simply, when was the last time you saw an Irishman, a Russian, Polish? No, they have mongrelized themselves, and now they have emerged as white and are determined to hold the line. So yeah, you're right. There aren't multiple races. However, there are multiple experiences that are occurring based upon the social construct of race. And to deny that is reckless and is in many ways offensive to our ancestors, and should be offensive to our new immigrant brethren, who long ago have forgotten that when they arrived on these shores, that they were considered the inwards of the North.
Humans, there's one race, the human race. I'm part of that race. You're part of that race. We're all part of that race, and we're a big family. And there are some Black people like myself. There are lots of us that don't believe white people are the problem.
Once again, he's correct. We are all a part of the human race, but the brother is getting ready to do something that I consider to be treasonous. He's trying to leave the impression that if only Black folk tried harder, they would be able to overcome these things. If only you worked harder. you'd be able to make it. And it's a blatant, I'm not arguing that hard work is not integral to this issue, to coming up in this nation. I don't think that any black person who understands any formula of success would argue against that. But what I have to push back against is the insinuation that quite simply you have not because you haven't worked for it. As Brother Malcolm X said, to understand my life, you got to look at my daddy's life, my granddaddy's life, and his dad before him. These things are not new. The racial oppression that black folk have experienced is a real intangible thing. Now, many of us, thank God, have found ways, inventive ways to trump it and overcome it. But some of us have not been so fortunate. But I have a problem with the idea of denying the existence of racial animosity and racial problems.
There is individual responsibility. I want to be judged by the content of my character and not the color of my skin.
Nobody could reasonably argue that there's individual responsibility. You know, as I said, I'm not wholly against what he is saying. There is individual responsibility. We must be, even those who have overcome, so to speak, we need to be undergirded by something that one of my professors at The Ohio State University, Stephanie J. Shaw, in her book, What a Woman Ought to Be and Ought to Do, she uses this term that I rely on often, and it is quite simply socially responsible individualism. Yeah, you do have some responsibility um, as an individual to work as hard as you can to lift yourself up, but you also have a responsibility to the nation and to the race to aid others along the way. If you've overcome, work as an agent of change to help other people. But this idea of all you must do in America to make it is work hard is denying a whole lot of other factors. And many of these factors are not solely based upon racial identity. They're based upon class. Many of our white countrymen who are still first generation college students and what have you, their community, this white community has done a better job of absorbing them and getting them non-academic college level employment. But it's reckless once again to sit here and to talk about, well, oh, if y'all just try harder. And then this whole litany, once again, that 1963 moment of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where he talks about the content of our character. We're the only ones that are really talking like that are on the bottom. We're very quick to grab for these racial tropes. Well, judge me as a man by the content of my character. I'm an individual person. If you are Black in America, you are inextricably tied to other Black folk. It's the reason why when you see some socially inappropriate Black folks show up, either in dress, language, behavior, you cringe inside. Because even if it's in a roundabout, disjointed way, that negative behavior is going to tarnish you. We're talking about the image, the brand, especially when you're talking about the brand of Black men. Of course, we have brilliant Black men who present themselves appropriately, are articulate and what have you. But the old saying of a little bit of bad will tear down a whole lot of good, we still cringe because we recognize, and I guarantee you it's the same for this brother, that let a police car pull up behind him. We naturally get that feeling, that pit in the stomach feeling. Yeah, we want to be judged individually, but we live in a nation that is so obsessed with the idea of groups that we wholeheartedly created two groups that there is no biological or land-based association, black and white. If there is no white land, I must ask you, where's black land? And the subsequent question that I would like to ask people, such as this brother, is quite simply, why was why were racial classifications created? And that's a long and lengthy story. But it is the very stitching that is holding together Old Glory. You can't ignore that and expect to be able to say, well, we're just part of the human race and this and that. That's foolish. That's myopic. It's short-sighted. It's ahistorical. It's untrue.
So I'm going to do the same thing for you. I'm going to judge you by the content of your character and not by the color of your skin. If you agree with this, you're part of the human race. And welcome to the family.
Yeah, you can judge people by the content of their character, especially when you don't have any power to impact their lives. If you looked at them negatively, what could you do? If you look at them positively, what could you do for them? You're in many ways, being black in America, you're not in a position to be a major difference maker. And the truth of the matter is that one of the most frightening things that black professionals have to deal with, and it's why they measure their words. It's why they're careful. It's why they've learned how to code switch. It's because they understand, and there's a sub discourse that is always going on that Negroes like this one right here don't want to acknowledge. And that sub discourse is always, watch what you say around white folk. Don't get too friendly. Don't play with them. Because if something goes wrong and there's an incident, you know, you may not want to admit it in public, but the majority of black folk know that there isn't a single black person who has the ability to extricate them from trouble with white folk. So we can go around being nice and quite simply saying, oh, well, I want to be judged by the content of it. Of course you do. But now let's talk about the reality of how are you judged? From the moment that you walk in, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a black man in a three-piece suit or if you're a white man with a great big beard with a biker jacket on. From the moment that you walk into a person's presence, they're already sizing you up and coming up with conclusions that have nothing to do with who you are. And that's just the truth of being an American. That's who we are. We judge people and we navigate the world based upon prior experience. That's why this idea of being just human and judged by the content of my character is utter foolishness. Deal with the past. Deal with the fact that the Irish, the Polish, the Russians, the Germans, the new immigrants made a strategic decision to become white after World War One. Those are historical facts. That's why they've disappeared. There hasn't been a alien abduction of these people. They became white. And I know that it pains black people like this brother right here. You'll never be welcomed in. Not like other groups were. You have a identifier. You'll always be physically distinctive from them. Now, of course, you'll come across some people who are well-meaning, who may be anti-racist, but they don't represent the entire nation. And therefore, you'd better be very careful about how you're conceiving your place in America, the descendant of enslaved, stolen Africans. This brother, he's well meaning and he wants to get past race. But the truth of the matter is that this ain't the way to do it, my brother. None of us know how to do it, but this certainly is not the way to do it. So I'll end this right now. And if any of you have a video you'd like for me to respond to, please send it to me. You can send it to my email at manhoodraceculture@gmail.com. And once again, thanks for your time and thanks for visiting this channel. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and push the notification button. Peace.